Children of helicopter parents, what was the worst or most embarrassing thing they put you through? And or the worst thing you experienced in that upbringing? When I went away to college, my parents would call me every day. I went away to a fraternity weekend retreat during my freshman year where us pledges weren't supposed to bring our phones. I told my parents that I'm going away 3 days and not to call me. On the day we were coming back, the guy driving us got a call. He then hands me his phone and tells me to call my parents. It turns out that when my parents couldn't reach me for 3 days, they came to my college and went around my dorm and half the campus, asking everyone if they've seen their lost little boy. I was 18 at the time. On top of that, since I was on their family cell phone plan, they looked up all the numbers I had recently called and texted. They proceeded to call everyone letting them know I'm lost and asking if they knew where I was. This included girls that I had crushes on but barely knew, random classmates, and mild acquaintances. When I got back to my worried parents waiting for me at my dorm, I found my cell phone with a bunch of messages of people asking if I'm okay and letting me know my parents are looking for me. For the next day, every 1 in 5 people I walked past would ask me if I talked to my parents because they were looking for me. My cousin had an interesting freshman year experience. She was roomed with another girl with a helicopter mother. The mother slept in this tiny dorm room with the daughter and my cousin for several weeks, until she could convince the RA to kick the mother out. My buddy had the worst helicopter mom. We were going to college 3 hours away from his hometown, and ended up at a random after bar party with people we met just that night. His mom showed up, no idea how she found us, walked in and grabbed him by the ear, and dragged him out to her car. She then proceeded to drive him back to our hometown. The next day, she made him get a ride back to college with his former high school sweetheart he had recently broken up with. She did all this because mom didn't approve of the breakup. Edit, it probably was a phone tracking thing. Pretty sure he was still on a family plan at the time. He's now married to a woman who is, in my opinion, also rather controlling. Oedipus is real. When I was engaged to my now husband, I was given many long lectures by my parents about how I couldn't lean my head on his shoulder, or ever be alone with him, because it would lead him to have uncontrollable urges which would then lead him to rape me and it would be my fault for working him up. These lectures became daily and increased in absurdity. Glad my husband was able to stick it out. Things are much better now that I live with him on the other side of the country. This thread is my life. Up until I left for college my bedtime was 9 every night. I wasn't supposed to be on the phone past 8:30. I wasn't allowed to go outside by myself. Couldn't have friends over after 7. Couldn't go to a boy's house until the summer after high school. I had to show my parents my grades every semester to show I was successful. I rode the bus until my senior year because he wouldn't take me to get my license until I was 17. He pretty much told me I had to attend a certain college because it was X amount of time away from home. While I'm in college, he makes me show him my grades, check in once a week with 3 different family members, and makes me move home every summer. Now that I'm applying for master's programs and trying to move away, every conversation ends with an argument about me moving away and trying to start my own life. Edit, my parents were divorced, and when my mom died I moved in with my dad and his girlfriend at the age of 10. The first time I told him no he tried to hit me with a belt. He's been paying for my college out of the benefits I received from my mother, which I didn't even know about until a brother from my mom's side told me about them. My dad became enraged when I found out about the money, and he cut off communication with that side of the family. Showing grades is totally normal, until a surprise visit campus trying to fact check, or when my then boyfriend hung himself and my grades dropped. He told me I was too stupid for college and wasting his money and needed to drop out. Him and his GF worked all of the time so I went to babysitter until I was a sophomore on high school. I feel like I don't have the ability to make friends now, because my social interactions were really limited due to some of his rules. I didn't really know how to have a relationship with men growing up. I just did whatever would make them happy and not get upset with me. I don't really know how to do a lot of life things myself and my boyfriend is slowly teaching me, thank God. When I was a sophomore in college, I stayed the night at my then boyfriend's house, and my dad told me I must have just spent the last year in school sleeping around and no one would want me because of it. I live with my now boyfriend, and it's the longest relationship I've ever been in, and he's helping me move away. I was accepted to a master's program in Canada and one in my home state, and I'm terrified to leave, so I'm going to the in-state one. It's farther away than now, so I see it as a baby step. No one in our family lives outside an hour drive from each other. I'm the first to go to college and actually finish, and I'm going to get away. I wasn't allowed to hang out with girls when I was younger, and one day I was at the school park with some of my friends and there were a couple girls there too. My mom called me on the phone to ask who I was hanging out with. I only mentioned my guy friends. Well, apparently my mom was spying on me with binoculars. The park was just a few blocks from my house. As soon as she saw the girls, she drove to the park, got out and made a big scene about it in front of everyone, and made me go home. That probably wasn't even the most embarrassing thing she's put me through. There's been countless other situations. Gee, what a fantastic way to stunt the growth of your child's social skills. Not the most embarrassing thing, but the only one I feel okay sharing. She would constantly go through my phone and read everything when I wasn't around, and I'd find out when she brought up embarrassing information in front of friends, family, a crush. Once she found my crush on Facebook and messaged him a long ass message that I don't even want to know what it said. All I know is that he was super uncomfortable when he asked me if I knew she had contacted him. As for the worst part about it, I never felt a sense of freedom. I always felt watched. I was never a bad kid, but I felt violated every day and night. I felt like I never had my own sense of self. Your mum was the McAfee antivirus of your life. Ha. Finally an Ask Reddit thread I have a good answer to. I am still a teenager, so I'm still putting up with my parents' helicopter habits. My parents were furious when they found out I had watched The Hunger Games at a friend's house. Same thing happens whenever I watch a movie rated PG or above and they're not there to fast forward through the kissing scenes and mild cursing. They don't allow me to spend money without telling them first. I once bought a pack of gum without telling them. It wasn't pretty. Long story short, I got my phone taken away for a week after being chewed out for a solid hour. My dad has software on my phone that tells him whatever I do on the internet. This includes texting and calling. He'll probably see this, but I don't care. I'd better stop typing now, they might catch me. My mother once drove to my workplace after school when I was 17 to check and make sure I was actually working. She then freaked out at me when I got home because she claimed I wasn't there, when really she just didn't drive all the way in the parking lot to avoid being seen since she drives such a distinct car. That was around her phase of thinking I was on hardcore drugs and sleeping with the entire male population of my town. I was an A+ student who worked every day after school plus weekends. Don't know when she thought I'd have time for all of that. That was around her phase of thinking I was on hardcore drugs. Ah yes. I remember that phase. I was 12 when my mom accused me of doing heroin because I called her crazy. In my defense, bitch is cray. No, I've never done heroin. One of the more memorable experiences, when I was a freshman, my cousin was a senior and through him, I made a lot of friends that were upperclassmen. So at the end of the year, I got invited to go to prom. My parents made my date, who was just a friend, come over 2 weeks before prom and basically asked him every question imaginable. They got his phone number, home number, email, the works. He was super chill about it because my cousin had warned him beforehand. When prom actually came around, I wasn't allowed to ride in the limo with everyone else. Instead, my mom drove me in her ugly ass Astro van that looked like the Mystery Machine, and she had my siblings and cousins packed in there. When we got to the venue, she got off with me and asked an administrator if she could stay. Thank God he said no. Oh, and I had a curfew 8:30 p.m. It was 7 when I got there. Ugh. Your mom clearly thinks she is on a permanent escort mission. Mom read in my diary that I had lost my virginity to my BF of the time ex. She called my school's principal to tell him that ex had raped me. Oh my god. What happened then? Surely you cleared X's name, right? X gone gave it to her. Depriving me of internet. In grade 9, I was only allowed to use my laptop in the kitchen to do my homework. My parents blocked Facebook, but I found websites that helped me use Facebook chat. In grade 10, I was allowed to take my laptop to my room, but my dad turned my internet on and off every other hour from 8 in the morning until midnight, at which point it shut off for the night. It was ridiculous because I could never sit down long enough to get any work done before the internet was gone, and I had to wait for the next hour. My dad found out about the chat sites I used as a workaround for Facebook and blocked those. I resorted to using Bing Bar's Facebook chat function, which was slow and glitchy. In grade 11 and 12, my internet was shut off at 1 in the morning and parental controls were removed. I went crazy and watched Netflix and talked to people all the time, which obviously had a negative toll on my grades. TLDR, my parents made me use Bing. My dad followed me into jury duty when I was 21 because he didn't believe I could do it myself. I insisted that he didn't come, but he did anyways. He was stopped by security guards outside the area and he threw a huge fuss about not being able to accompany me. Most of the courtroom was confused and weirded out. Luckily, they didn't need me throughout the trial, so I was dismissed. There's a lot more weird shit my dad does, but this one stood out to me when I first read this post. Does he not understand how jury duty works? Helicopter parents don't understand how a lot of things work. A friend of mine growing up, whenever she came next door to hang out, her parents would watch her leave, walk across the lawn, enter my house, and she had to call when she got inside. Edit. A lot of people are saying this sort of makes sense. I could get it if it was a couple of minutes away or down the block, but we lived in suburban townhouses. It was maybe 100 feet and 15 seconds of travel time. This one really smacks of the crazy. She had to call from next door? What's there even to say? I'm in the place you just saw me go into? I work in an ER, and I get sick and tired of helicopter parents bringing their offspring in for ridiculous reasons. He got a nosebleed a week ago, and again today. She's been having foot pain after PE, etc. The worst are the parents that bring their over 18-year-old kids into the ER because they want them drug tested. I love turning to the legal adult and asking, do you consent to this? The parent normally turns beet red and starts yelling at me about how they are the parent, and they pay the insurance, yada yada blah blah. At which point I remind them that their precious child is now an adult, and without their child's express consent I cannot perform any tests on them. I've seen more than my fair share of light bulbs go off over the kid's head, and them flat out refuse all lab work. I tell them, alright, you heard him. I can't do anything. This normally ends in a call to the hospital administrator that will then tell them the same thing. I am also not allowed to give out any information over the phone, as I cannot verify you are the legal guardian, nor in the room without express permission. It's fun to watch people's veins throb when they can't get their way. My parents weren't helicopter parents, per se. It was mainly my dad who was really strict only about movies. For example, when I was in high school, I asked if I could go to the movies with my friends. It was a G.I. Joe movie that I wasn't super into, but it was mainly to just do something fun. My dad said he wouldn't let me go unless I wrote a paper on the movie after I watched it about its redeeming qualities and Christian principles. I didn't go to any school dance or sports event. So yeah, no prom, nothing. I was not allowed to go to the mall by myself when I was 19 years old. My dad would follow me around. Like he'd walk about 5 feet behind me. When I was 20 I said I was going to get a cell phone and got into a big fight with my parents because they didn't want me to have one. I had been working since 15 and was going to pay for it myself, etc. Couldn't lock the door to my bedroom or the bathroom, even in my early 20s. Moving out was the best thing ever. I remember when I was 12 or so, my mom, little sister, 7 at the time, and I went to Costco to do some shopping. My dad showed up dressed as a clown. He used to dress up for birthday parties, followed me and my little sister around honking his clown horn in our ears, yelling to all the guys that he was our dad. He still shows up at my work and tells my coworker to tell me that my daddy is here to see me. I'm 31. I think the last time I called him daddy was when I was 7-8. Nobody calls him daddy.